Hello and welcome to Quantitative and Qualitative Research in Applied Linguistics. I am Mohsen. This is session 3, and today we're going to look at qualitative research designs. Last session we talked about pre-experimental designs, factorial designs, and also we talked about non-experimental designs. If you remember, we said that we have different types of non-experimental designs, namely causal comparative study, correlational study, descriptive research, survey research, and field research. Today, we are going to begin with a discussion of the nature of qualitative research and how it differs from other approaches. And next, commonly used methods for gathering qualitative data will be outlined. It has been for a long time that quantitative research has dominated inquiries in education. Over the last 2 decades, because of the observed limitations, an alternative for quantitative approach has been called for by scholars in the field. Qualitative research was suggested as an alternative to quantitative research. Qualitative research is synthetic in approach and heuristic in nature and objective. In fact, qualitative research is not represented by numbers like in quantitative research. Rather, qualitative research focuses on meaning and the involvement of the researcher in the process. It is a multi-method approach. In fact, it involves interpretive naturalistic approach to its subject matter. We should say that qualitative researchers study things in their natural settings without changing anything like in other experimental studies. The things are investigated in their natural settings, and researchers attempt to make sense of the phenomena in terms of the meanings people bring to them. So it is inductive, and the purpose of qualitative research is describing multiple realities, developing deep understanding, and also capturing everyday life and human perspectives. In fact, Mackey and Gass briefly defined the term qualitative research as a kind of research which is based on descriptive data and does not make regular use of statistical procedures. Qualitative research is a type of empirical research, and as with all empirical research, this kind of research begins with the observation of the phenomena. Afterwards, the data are recorded and classified. Then, themes, patterns, and processes are developed in order to organize the massive amount of data generated. And when we collect the data in qualitative research, we will deal with a massive amount of data generated. So we need to find patterns, we need to find themes in order to organize the data. Usually, there is no theoretical framework to base the research, and the researcher is attempting to discover principles and strategies that can provide valid evidence to develop theory. That is, qualitative research is different from quantitative research because from the very beginning we don't have a theoretical framework, or it might be that we don't have a theoretical framework. So, little by little, as we collect the data and analyze the data, little by little, in fact, we form the theoretical framework of a qualitative research. It is therefore concluded that qualitative research is locally situated, or we can say it is participant oriented, it is holistic and inductive. We have four major qualitative designs, namely ethnography, action research, case study, and grounded theory. Today, we are going to talk about each of these qualitative designs one by one. Scholars in the field of second language research believe that all qualitative research designs share the following key characteristics. Number one is naturalistic settings. Qualitative research are carried out in naturalistic settings in comparison to laboratory settings or manipulated settings. Number two, broad research questions. Qualitative researchers ask broad research questions designed to explore, designed to interpret, or to understand the social context. Next is non-random sampling. Participants in qualitative research are usually selected through non-random methods because we want individuals who have enough information, who have information vital to the questions being asked. So this is why non-random sampling is another key characteristic of all qualitative research. Next is observation and interviews. Data collection techniques involve methods such as observation and interviews because they bring the researcher into close contact with the participants. Number five is interactive role of the researcher. Here in qualitative research, the researcher is likely to take an interactive role through which she or he gets to know the participants and the social context in which they live. This is why we say that it is a key characteristic because every qualitative researcher should contact with the social context and should contact with the participants. Six is hypothesis or formed after data collection. Yes, here in qualitative research, hypotheses are formed after the researcher begins data collection and are modified through the study. In fact, this is not a must, but sometimes it happens that you have to modify the research questions throughout the study as new data are collected and analyzed. And next is narrative form. This study reports data in a narrative form using words rather than numbers. As we mentioned before, in qualitative research, we are dealing with descriptions, we are dealing with narration. So instead of numbers, like what we use in quantitative research, here in qualitative research, we need to explain everything using words rather than numbers. A good starting point in our exploration of the scientific qualitative methods of discovery is ethnography, because this approach embodies in many ways the essence of the qualitative inquiry. In fact, some scholars believe that ethnography can be used as a synonym for qualitative research. So let's start with the definition of ethnography. Ethnography seeks to obtain insights into the classroom as a cultural system through naturalistic, uncontrolled observation and description. Also, ethnography best fits a qualitative approach because of the need to understand how culture sharing groups work. In fact, ethnography seeks to describe and understand the behavior of a particular social or cultural group. And in order to do this, researchers try to see things from the perspective of members of the group, that is, the people. And this requires extended exposure to the field. If you look at this slide carefully, you can see that the key concept in the definitions given for ethnography is culture. A culture is everything having to do with human behavior and belief. Culture can consist of language, consist of rituals, economic, political structures, life stages, interactions, communications, everything related to human behavior and belief. The focus of ethnography is on the patterns of a culture shaping group. So, in ethnography, we focus on the patterns, on the themes. So, in obtaining information about culture shaping group, the ethnographer usually employs a substantial time in the field and tries to interview, observe, and gather documents about the group to understand their sharing behaviors, beliefs, and language. This is why observation and interview are known to be the two major standard procedures for collecting data in ethnography. In the field of language education, we can suggest the possible type of topics or issues that researchers as ethnographers might examine. For example, ethnographers might choose to study the development of learning communities in a classroom where both teachers and students work together, looking at L2 learning issue from emic perspective. Or we can consider relationships between native English speaking teachers and non native English speaking teachers in Iranian high schools. That is, we can see if there is any association between native English teachers and non native English teachers in high schools of Iran. For example, we can talk about their cultures, we can check if the performances are different, and things like that. Further, we can imagine a case in which the researchers might be involved with investigating the impact of executive decisions on teachers' practices in the classroom context. Hence, the administrative staff might also become research participants. Mind that these issues and topics are not well defined research questions. They must be worked on out by researchers so as to become justified and feasible for investigation. And these are just broad examples. The last one, the impact of executive decisions on teachers' practices in classroom context. This one is too broad. You need to narrow it down. You need to mention what do you mean by, for example, executive decisions. In a realistic research, we need to justify everything we do. In fact, applied linguistics as a field has an inherent interest in intercultural communication and therefore in ethnographic research. So, this type of research is embraced by scholars who look at language learning as a profoundly social practice and see second language learning, second culture learning, and language socialization as inextricably bound. In addition, because of the increasingly situated nature of much research in SLA, ethnography has also been utilized for the contextualized analysis of classroom discourse and school learning. For example, studies have been done on the nature of the discourse in the classroom. I mean, the discourse of the students, the discourse of the teacher, how, for example, questions are asked by the students or by the teacher. A study can focus on, for example, the issue of politeness in classroom discourse. All of these can be considered as ethnographies. Case study means different things to different people. It is sometimes regarded as a quantitative method and sometimes as a qualitative method. Some would even consider case study as a paradigm. A case is a particular instance of a phenomenon. A case study is defined as an in-depth study of instances of a phenomenon in its natural context and from the perspective of the participants involved in the phenomenon. Similar to ethnography, case study is defined as an in-depth study of tokens of a phenomenon, for example, language learning, in its natural context, and it is viewed from the participants' perspectives involved in the research process. It is done to shed light on the phenomena, which is the processes, events, persons, or things of interest to the researcher. So it is like ethnography in the sense that it is an in-depth study of tokens of the phenomena in its natural context. In fact, case study provide detailed descriptions of specific learners or sometimes classes. When a case is selected for study, what is actually important is that the focus of research should be on a particular unit or set of units, like, for example, institutions, programs, events, and so on, in order to provide a detailed description of the unit. As for the sampling, in most cases, the researcher uses purposive sampling, though there might be other options such as cluster sampling. Case studies are also usually associated with a longitudinal approach in which observations of the phenomena under investigation are made at periodic intervals for an extended period of time. This is another characteristic of case studies. In fact, like ethnographies, case studies generally aim to provide a holistic description of language learning or use within a specific population and setting. However, whereas ethnographies focus on cultural patterns within groups, case studies tend to provide detailed descriptions of specific learners or specific classes within their learning setting. One well known longitudinal case study investigating the development of L2 communicative competence is Schmidt's 1983 study of Wes, who was an ESL learner. Wes was a 33-year-old native speaker of Japanese who had little formal instruction in English. Schmidt studied Wes' language development over a 3-year period. This study focused on a small number of grammatical features, including plural s, third person singular, and regular past tense. Schmidt transcribed conversations between West and friends and also transcribed monologues that he asked West to produce while at home in Japan. Although West attained relatively high levels of pragmatic ability, he had very limited improvement in terms of linguistic accuracy for the grammatical forms over the 3 years of the study, thus providing evidence for the separability of linguistic and pragmatic competence. This was an example of a longitudinal case study done by Schmidt. It was a case study because it only focused on one person who was Wes, and it was longitudinal because it was done along 3 years. Another well-known case study was done by Ellis in 1984. It was an investigation of two child learners in an L2 context. J was a 10-year-old Portuguese boy and R was an 11-year-old Pakistani boy. Both of them were learning ESL in London in a program that catered to new arrivals with the aim of preparing them for transfer to higher schools. Ellis investigated the learning patterns of the two children in an instructed context, as opposed to the naturalistic context in which I previously mentioned in the study done by Schmidt. That was a naturalistic context that West studied. In order to examine the learners, Ellis used transcriptions, and also he regularly observed the classes and wrote down the samples of the requests the two children produced. And at the end, Ellis analyzed the transcriptions and the notes he made in the observations, and he documented the different stages in the children's use of requests over time. And this was a case study on two children, and it was again a longitudinal one. And there was also another qualitative case study in 2013, which focused on an EFL teacher's critical literacy teaching in a reading class in Taiwan. And the study was guided by three research questions about how does a college teacher teach critical literacy in university level, or how does the teacher conceptualize critical literacy, or what difficulties or challenges does the teacher encounter in taking a critical literacy approach to EFL reading instructions. As you can see, all of these are examples of qualitative case studies. Mostly they focus on specific people. In the first one person named Wes. In the second one, two child EFL learners. And in the last one, the focus is on one EFL teacher in Taiwan. As the name suggests, action research is a qualitative research tradition that involves both action and research. There are plentiful models and definitions of action research, but one that is widely known is from Carr and Chemist 1986. Action research is simply a form of self-reflective inquiry undertaken by participants in order to improve their rationality and justice of their own practices, their understanding of these practices, and the situations in which the practices are carried out. So, action research is believed to be the most systematic applied and practical design among qualitative designs. It is similar to mixed methods research in terms of using both quantitative and qualitative methods. A particular problem is typically emphasized by teachers or educators with the purpose to find a solution for it. Action research is then defined as a kind of inquiry that um, a kind of inquiry that not only examines an issue but also improves it as well. So, good teachers use action research to investigate a teaching procedure and, by its reflection, improve his or her practice. Action research is a self reflection inquiry typically used by teachers and practitioners to reflect upon themselves. So, as you can see, in action research, we in fact do the research and we try to solve the problem. We in fact try to improve it. Suppose that there is a teacher who does a kind of action research in order to improve his or her own teaching methodology. Richards, 2003, argues that although action research is firmly case based, it represents a move from a descriptive stance to an interventionist position, where a key aim of the research is to understand better some aspects of professional practice as a means of bringing about improvement. Think about the classroom. The final aim is to bring improvement. Action research also aims at other things. It is not merely instrumental. In fact, there are two essential aims of action research: to improve and to involve. Action research aims at improvement in these three areas. Firstly, the improvement of a practice. Secondly, the improvement of understanding of the practice by its practitioners. And thirdly, the improvement of the situation in which the practice takes place. The aim of involvement stands shoulder to shoulder with the aim of improvement. So, in fact, in action research, we try to improve practice and understanding of the practice, and also we want to improve the situation itself. So, as you can see, the aims are not merely instrumental. We also like to improve and we also like to involve. That is, we want to involve the researcher in the practice and understanding of the practice, and also involve him or her in the situation. Mills 2011 identified two major types of designs, such as practical action research and participatory action research. Using practical action research, teachers pursue research problems in their own classrooms in order to improve their students' learning and their own practices. In doing so, they form teams that consist of teachers, students, educators, counselor, and so on, in order to solve the practical everyday problem of education. So this is why we call it practical, because teachers want to solve their problems, and that's all. This is the final aim, to solve the everyday problem of their classroom or education. On the other hand, participatory action research is regarded as an action-oriented research. Instead of seeking the solution to the immediate classroom problems, participatory action research has a social nature and moves towards investigations to contribute to emancipation or alteration in our society. Participatory action research are also known by different names such as participatory research, critical action research, or classroom action research. In fact, as you see, in the practical type, we only deal with a teacher who wants to solve the problems of the classroom. But in participatory one, the goal is, we can say, a broad one. It has a social nature, and we want to make a kind of contribution to the society in participatory action research. There is a whole series of areas you may think to investigate using action research, but four broad areas of interest are commonly used by scholars. One is teaching practice. You're teaching and making changes in teaching practice. For example, how do my learners respond to my teaching of pronunciation? This can be a good topic for a type of action research. Or your learners and how they learn. For example, what kinds of activities motivate my learners most effectively in a writing class? You can do an action research in order to investigate your learners and how you can improve the way they learn. Next is your interaction with the current curriculum and with curriculum innovation. For example, what can I do to make the students' mandated curriculum more appealing to my learners? Suppose that you are working in an institute and you see that the students don't like the curriculum, they don't like their books. You can do an action research in order to see what you can do in order to make this boring curriculum more appealing to your students. And another broad area is related to teaching beliefs. Your teaching beliefs and philosophies and their connections with the daily practice. This can be another area in order to be investigated via action research. For example, I'm interested in the concept of teacher expertise. What should be the balance between learner-centeredness and teacher-centeredness in my classroom? Maybe you have seen some of your colleagues. Some of them let students to talk a lot. Some of them let students to do whatever they want in the classroom. On the other hand, some other colleagues, they don't let students to talk at all. In fact, they don't let students to move. Now, what about you? You are interested in the concept of teacher expertise, and now you want to see what should be the balance between learner-centeredness and teacher-centeredness. You can do an action research in your own classroom and find the answer to this research question. Grounded theory. Grounded theory is another type of qualitative research. You use grounded theory when you need a broad theory or explanation of a process. Grounded theory generates a theory when existing theories do not address your problem or the participants that you plan to study. because it fits the situation, actually works in practice, is sensitive to individuals in a setting, and may represent all the complexities actually found in the process. We use grounded theory. Because the theory is grounded in the data, it provides a better explanation than a top down theory borrowed off the shelf. Sometimes it's better to ground a theory, to start a theory yourself instead of using other people's theories. You also use grounded theory when you wish to study some process, such as how students develop as writers. Sometimes, maybe there are some theories about writing or L1 writing, but what about L2 writing? What about English writing? What about writing English as a foreign language? What about writing in English by Iranian students? Is there any theory for that? When you want to investigate the process, you can use grounded theory. Grounded theory, however, is seldom used by less experienced researchers in applied linguistics, though it has been an appealing character recently. Perhaps this complexity of grounded theory might be due to the fact that grounded theory researchers simultaneously collect the data and analyze it from the initial phase of research. Because in grounded theory, you need to analyze the data as soon as you collect the data. This adds to the complexity of this type of research, and this is why less experienced researchers are not able to do it. Grounded theory is useful in applied linguistics research in several aspects. For example, in second language context, with regards to researching the process of how EFL learners develop their writing ability or how they can develop as writers. Here, the researcher can practice grounded theory to see really how can EFL learners become good writers or how they can become, in fact, writers. We can use grounded theory. Another case in which one can use grounded theory is where the researcher intends to explore, for example, how high stakes testing influenced the nature and the process of preparation courses, as well as teachers' instructional decisions and professionalism. Here we want to, for example, see the effect of testing on the process of preparation courses and also on the instruction of the teachers. We want to see the effect. Here, the researcher can apply a grounded theory for inductively collecting and analyzing data from interviews with the teachers, interviews with the students, and also the researcher can use field notes. And after the analysis, the researcher can uncover the themes grounded in the data. For example, you can found maybe three or four themes related to the effect of high stake tests on the teachers. For example, one theme which can be uncovered from the data is related to personality. The other theme can be professionalism. The other thing can be, for example, academic compromise. Another theme can be strategic compromise. These are the themes that may emerge from the data using grounded theory. Also, one can use grounded theory to analyze the interviews with language teachers to explore how they will interpret the relationship between students' class participation and class influences. So you can use grounded theory in order to analyze the interviews with the teachers. And again, after the analysis of the interviews, you can extract themes from the interviews in order to explain how the teachers interpret the relationship between participation in class and the influence of the classroom. Today, our discussion was about qualitative research. The growing practice of utilizing qualitative and quantitative data illustrates that these two research approaches, qualitative and quantitative research approaches, should not be viewed as opposing poles in a dichotomy, but rather as complementary means of investigating the complex phenomena at work in second language acquisition. If you remember, in the other sessions, I talked about quantitative research and also a mixture of the two, which is called mixed methods research. So do not think about quantitative and qualitative research approaches as opposing poles in a dichotomy. No, we can use both of them in order to design good and quality research. So in qualitative research, we have different designs. We talked about ethnography as a type of qualitative research, case study, action research, and at the end, we discussed grounded theory as a type of qualitative research. I hope this session would be helpful to you. And this is the end of session 9 on qualitative research designs. Have a good time and goodbye.